Hello everyone and welcome back to the Council of Elrond podcast where we discuss all things Lord of the Rings. My name is Dave. I'm joined by my brother as always, Johnny. And today we are breaking down episode 6 of the Rings of Power entitled Where Is He? Before we begin, I have to introduce a brilliant guest to this week's show. He's been here before, or as Frodo says, we've been here before. We love him here on the Council of Elrond. It's Chase Mullins, so welcome back, Chase. How are you?
Guys? Very good. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, we were delighted to get you back. You were one of our favorite episodes of season 1.
Back by popular demand.
Oh, yes. Really? Yeah, by the two of you, yeah.
Well, just Dave, really. Yeah, I was iffy on it.
If you actually look at the comments on that podcast and the YouTube, I think a lot of people were like, "I love Chase. Like, bring Chase back."
That's good. Honestly. That's all I want my father to say to me. But I'll take the YouTube comments. That's great.
Right. Well, Chase, would you like to introduce yourself and let everyone know where they can find you?
Oh yeah. So hi, I'm Chase Mullins. I live in Los Angeles. I'm an actor. I've been acting since 2015. You can see me in some pretty terrible movies, including Liam Neeson's The Marksman, the second to worst X-Men movie, X-Men Apocalypse, as Jubilee's boyfriend. And you can see me in The Mean One, which I think most people said ruined their childhood because we did a parody horror movie of The Grinch. So if you don't hate me already, get ready for that. And you can find me on Instagram at ChaseMM18. I think it's the same thing on Twitter.
Yeah, awesome. And we're going to put all of the links to your socials in the description below. So guys, if you want to check out Chase, check him out there on Instagram. He's pretty awesome and we love all the bands on there. So anyways, let's get into this episode. We normally like to break it down kind of story by story, but this time I think it just makes sense to go at it a bit more linear because some of the scenes kind of blend in together, and I think we should just kick it right off from where the episode opens with Elrond here. Now this is the only time we see him in the episode, but he's running through the forest, stumbling upon some deserting orcs. So guys, Chase, what did you think of the opening scene of this episode?
I'll take more Arondir any day of the week, and especially anytime the elves are getting to do cool elf stuff like hunting orcs. I love that scene. I love that they're really emphasizing the difference between the way the elves fight versus everyone else. He's so fluid with his movements when he takes them out, and I would watch that scene over and over again.
Absolutely, Johnny. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Like, did the orcs kind of reminded me a little bit of, you know, Gorbag and Shagrat in Return of the King when they're talking of slipping off and, you know, not answering to bosses and stuff. What did you think of this scene?
Yeah, it seemed like it could have been a bit of a tip of the cap to that, where these orcs were saying like, oh, we'll just go off and we'll set up our own little gang out here and we'll do our own pillaging and plundering and whatever, and we'll go off on our own and we don't want to take orders from Adar and things like that. But there was a moment that I was looking at it and I was like, is he going to like look at these orcs and take pity on them or, you know, start a conversation? No. Not take pity on them, but like, you know, kind of go, maybe interrogate them might be a better way of thinking it. But like, you know, I thought he was going to just spark up a conversation, but he was just like, no, death for you all, and in the most stylish and slick way possible. There's something I love, and I've always loved it like since childhood, of like kind of samurai kind of things when they just put their sword back into its sheath in like just this one swift movement and without looking as well. And he just like
no look. He
did that, but he turned it up to 11 this time. He was just like nearly, if he had missed that, he would have like run himself completely through. And I thought that was really, really cool. Unnecessary, but really cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing I have to say about Arondir as well, even though we only get a glimpse of him in this episode, I just absolutely love his theme, the Bear McCreary theme, and I feel like with season 2 getting the themes back again, it's just I'm finding a lot more joy, even more than season 1, because I've lived it, man. I've lived the experience of season 1, and now I'm just like, oh, it's great to hear.
It's like back. Nostalgia for season 1, which is like totally that's just the biggest praise you can give to Bear McCreary, that he created something only 2 years ago that I'm already seeing like season 2, and I'm like, oh, do you remember 2 years ago when we first heard this music? It's like, so that's pretty incredible for him. Also, also shout out to Arondir and letting his hair grow out a little bit. I'm wondering, are we going to get like by season 5 Arondir with like flowing locks down or something like, we'll see. But
long-haired elves, it's all I want. That's all I want. I'm like, season 3 guys, give me a time jump, give me some long-haired Elrond. His hair actually got shorter. That's a different conversation.
Did it?
Elrond's did.
Elrond's got way shorter. If you look at season 1, he's got some sweet 70s flowing locks. This time, he's got like a very Gen Z haircut, which
nice.
We'll save that for later.
One thing I was curious. I watched the episode, and then I went and rewatched it immediately because that's what we do here. We're very professional on the Melonheads, and
we watch TV.
On my second watch of this, I paused it and I started to think about the location of the orcs, and they're deserting. They're deserting the army of orcs that are marching from Mordor to Eregion. Now, this scene takes place, I'm assuming, near Pelalgir, because that's where Arondir is based. So I thought it was a little bit weird. I was like, we've seen the orcs are almost at Eregion, so they're like hundreds of miles away. So maybe these guys have deserted like a few months ago and they're walking away, but they're still a little bit too south of Mordor. Like I assume they would have left from the top left corner of Mordor. But Pelalgir is like to the west of it and southwest a little bit. So it's a little bit odd for me, but unless they really are like Gorbag and Shagrat, where they're literally going to find life somewhere else. But I don't know, did that spark up anything weird with you guys, or were you just like, yeah, no, I don't mind, I'm on board?
I assumed they were like scouts because, Adar, as you see in this episode specifically, he knows just about everything. This guy is like really planned for all outcomes, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, I got eyes everywhere, so send these guys out there. And maybe that's why they feel so comfortable with the idea of deserting, because they're like, we're so far already, and they're already back there, and this big battle is going to be happening. They're like, it would be so easy for us to slip away. So maybe that's it, but that's obviously me giving a lot of credit for the logic.
That's really cool. I like that idea a lot. No, I was just going to come in and say that I don't know if they're really going to stick rigidly to where things are exactly on the map, because I'm assuming that they think most people aren't going to look into the details like that. For example, in the episode with the Barrow Whites, they kind of, before, like they went to the Barrow Whites, or they were on their way there, and they couldn't cross the river because the bridge was out. So then they were like, let's go south, which is the opposite direction, which would lead you to the Barrow Whites. And then you have to cross the river as well and all this kind of stuff. So I was like, and then suddenly they were in the Barrow Downs, but it was like, okay, well, that's not where it would have been. And they also showed us like an image of the map just before they went to that location. So it was a bit weird. It was just like, here's the map of Middle-earth, and now we're here. It's like, okay, well, whatever. So again, for me, it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal, really. It's just kind of like, all right, cool. If they just show me more maps, I don't care where they put us. I'm just like, I love seeing the maps.
I love it.
So more maps.
Yes, Gondor, the capital of Mordor. I think they have been taking some liberties, but I do think there is a lot of thought into a lot of the shots. Like even some of the shots in the background, you can see where the water is, and it does actually reflect where the characters are in relation to their location on Middle-earth, and even where you see the sun rising and sun setting is accurate in some shots, and I think they are putting a lot of detail. But anyways, we'll move on, because this little scene ends with Arondir pulling out a map out of one of these orc deserters, and you can see on this map, well, at first I thought it might be like a map leading the orcs to Eregion, but on my second watch of this, I paused it and tried to like really look at the map, and you only kind of see Eregion, and then there's a bunch of little red arrows marked around, and I assume that's kind of maybe the battle plans, where Adar is and where the rest of the orcs are going to strike from. So, don't know. Thought that was a cool little detail.
I'm going to jump in here, because I'm just going to say that I had this terrifying image in my head when he pulled out this thing from the orc's pocket, that it was going to be like a picture that his son had drawn from her or something. God, and it's going to be like me and daddy or something. I would have been like, oh my God, no, please. Orcs can have families and children, and that's fine, but I don't want them to be like, I'm going to hang this up on the fridge when I get home, kind of thing.
My God.
So sorry, when I saw it was a map, I was like, oh, thank God.
I actually want someone to do a fan edit now where it is that, and then Ronder's kind of like, ooh, just like puts it back in the pocket. He's like, whoops,
Daddy's not coming home.
yeah, exactly.
Daddy did. Anyways, we get a nice transition to Celebrimbor, who stands there and says, "Ye rings of men, why do you still defy me?" And I don't know what it is about the start of this scene and the previous scene that we saw. Something about the music, something about the transition. It just felt like this episode has gone up a notch from even the last episode, which a lot of people praise. I kind of felt like this is more movie territory than television territory. It just felt like the production value itself went up. I don't know why. Maybe it was even the way he spoke, the way he was, he tossed his little lesser ring into the piles of, or whatever those things were, the little bands. And I thought, did either of you guys, Johnny, did you feel like there was a step up in quality in the production of this episode, even just at the very beginning?
I didn't notice it straight away, as you said at that point, but I feel like this season, there's definitely been some parts where I'm just looking at some of the CGI things that I'm kind of going, and people are nitpicking a lot of different things. And even for me, when I first saw, like, for example, like the Ents, and I was kind of going, oh, they're not exactly how I had imagined them in my mind. And I've just been like so over the top. And then I kind of sit back and think, this is a TV show. Like, I mean, we're so demanding. Our demands have just gone through the roof because this production was only considered for television, or sorry, for movies in the past, and now it's like what they're doing for these TV shows is really breathtaking. So, I'm going to say that it didn't stand out to me particularly in this episode, because I think also in the previous episode, or in the previous few episodes, we've already seen things that really had that really high production value. So, not more so.
Right. Well, anyways, what about you, Chase? Actually, you've got knowledge being an actor from behind the lens and in front of the lens. What do you think?
What are you asking me for?
So I was going to say, I think, to speak to your point, what I've noticed this season, and especially this episode, what gives it that more cinematic quality, a lot of tighter shots instead of these big wides. And a lot of television shows, to save time and money, you do these big wide establishing shots of two people just kind of standing there talking, because it's easy. It's really easy just to stick a camera there, and you don't have to be like, okay, well, now I got to get his over the shoulder. I got to get his over the shoulder. We got to get an insert of this. It takes more time, and it requires more specific lighting and stuff like that. Whereas a wide, you can just put it there, have the two people do their thing, and then they go off. You're fine. This, they're clearly taking the time to be like, let's get up in there. Let's get real close to them. Let's see this. And let's be really intentional about where we put the camera, and use that as a storytelling device. And I think they're doing a great job. I believe the gentleman's name is Alex, who's the DP for this. And I want to say Charlotte Brandstrom brought him in. He's phenomenal. I mean, that guy, I think episode 4 is one I would call out. I know Johnny was saying this whole season has been better. I'm pretty sure you could just close your eyes and pause any scene in that episode, and you get a screenshot worthy, or like a painting, especially the one of the elves standing by that little river when they're talking. I mean, there's so many shots in that episode that you could freeze frame, put on your wall, and someone would ask you, where'd you get that wonderful painting from? But yeah, they've done a great job this season and this episode.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's the way this scene began with Celebrimbor. I think it was a real close-up camera shot, and right, then it was like rotating around him.
That's really interesting. And when you said
really
that,
cool.
Chase, when you said that, like, those tight shots are much more complicated to just kind of get right with the lighting and all that kind of stuff, it makes a lot of sense. But it just immediately made me think of, I just recently watched the new season of The Bear. I'm not sure if either of you guys have seen that, but that show is just like, it's all extreme close-ups. It's most shots in the entire show, they can't even fit someone's face, and it's like an eye or like just their nose down, and it's like, it's so close. The cameras are right in there. So, I mean, I don't know, just from what you said, I'm like, that must have been an absolute nightmare for people in terms of lighting and production and all.
Oh yeah, and as an actor, you can't fake it when you're that close. There's a blessing and a curse to that. With a wide, you got to be a little bigger because you're selling it to a different lens. When it's that close, whatever you're going through has got to be really happening. But also, it means you don't have to project any of that. You can just do it, and your eye will tell the audience everything they need to know.
Awesome. So like every emotion is caught on camera, really.
100%. Yeah, you don't even have to force anything. You just got to take us through it, and the camera will catch all that.
And we're getting a lot of emotion from Lord Celebrimbor in this, so I think he really shone in this episode. We get to see him ill-tempered and losing his memory before Anatar enters with a wardrobe change, which was nice, and it wasn't really addressed. I thought like someone would say something, and immediately we get the manipulation where, you know, Celebrimbor thought he left his creasing hammer, and then suddenly it appears where clearly in the shot before it wasn't there. So I wanted to ask, Johnny, go first. What did you think? Did you think this was actually Celebrimbor turning a little bit crazy, or do you think this is more trick of the mind from Sauron?
I'd say it's most definitely, if not all, then for the most part, it is kind of trickery and illusion by Sauron. Maybe he's like kind of making Celebrimbor almost blind to his creasing hammer in that moment there, and then he says like, "Oh, I could have sworn it was there," and then he removes that shield or whatever he has, because he's a master of illusions, as we've seen. A bit like Ace Ventura is a master of disguises, I suppose. This guy's a master of illusions. I was just watching that weird Ace Ventura Lord of the Rings mashup this morning, so that kind of came
so good
for that reason.
So funny.
Never mind.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, so what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Celebrimbor.
Yeah.
So there was that. Now, for one thing, I would say was that I thought his reaction was a bit strange when he found that his creasing hammer was there, and he was like, "Oh, am I losing my mind?" And he kind of, instead of being really confused and kind of going, "Oh, that's strange," now he was just he kind of had this big laugh, almost like embarrassed in front of Anatar, being like, "Oh my goodness, what is going on?" kind of thing. And I just thought it was an interesting reaction. I didn't expect it. I think so. But it was just something that kind of caught me a little bit off guard, but not in a bad way or anything. I just thought it was an interesting choice. And he was kind of almost, I don't know, sort of bashful in front of this Anatar. So maybe he still holds him in this high regard where he doesn't want him to think, "Oh, I'm just losing my marbles." He's just kind of going, "Oh my goodness, oh, what a day," kind of thing.
Yeah, well, Chase, as you're an actor, maybe you can give us some... you can tell us a little bit more about this, because we're seeing two absolute legends go at it, the two Charlies.
Oh yeah,
we see Celebrimbor. He mentions that his mind is going, and Anatar suggests that maybe he's going so deep within it that coming out is an incredible burden, hinting that Celebrimbor should stay within his own mind to gain clarity. I thought like it was so subtle. I absolutely love it. I love Charles Edwards acting in the scene. But do you have any insight into what's going on between these two guys? Because like it's top tier.
The comment that Johnny was making about him being bashful or why he would do that, and I think it's the acting choice there is not to get super into like actor terminology, but we talk about things like you're objective and you're super objective as a character, as in a play or a movie, is you have one thing that you are going after. And if I were to distill Celebrimbor's, it's I want to be as good or better than Feanor. I want to surpass Feanor. And so all of his choices are informed by that. And one of them would be, I want to be worthy of the Valar's task. This guy was sent to me, needs me to make these rings. I need to make sure that he knows that I'm up to this. And so when he starts to lose his mind and he's forgetting things, he wants to downplay that as much as possible so that he's like, hey, I'm in control. I can do this. I can do this. And he has no clue that Anatar, Sauron, knows exactly what is happening. He's doing it to him because all you have to do is plant that little seed of doubt in someone and you can take control. And that's how he does it. He says he worms into your mind, and this is exactly what he's doing here. And the idea of encouraging him, go deeper into your mind, go deeper into your mind. And as we'll see later in this episode, you can see why he wants him to do that, because he needs him distracted in order for him to, well, not to reveal what's going to happen later, but he needs him to be distracted so that he can focus on what's going on, because what's going on outside, little crazy. So yeah, I think, and yeah, you're right. I mean, Charlie Vickers, I have to call him out here because, especially in this episode, but man, dude, was that guy just did a complete 180 from Halbrand. His presence as an elf, like if you talk about like understanding the assignment, and as much as I try not to make comparisons to the Peter Jackson movies all the time, because I know this is a separate entity, that dude is evoking every single elf we saw in PJ. He is so Celeborn. Yes, Lee Pierce. He's got all that sort of the arrogance of Thranduil with the stoicism of Celeborn and the gravity of an Elrond, of Hugo Weaving's performance. And I just love it. I love that his physical presence, I think is something that we should talk about. Is if you notice, even as a contrast to Charles Edwards' performance for Celebrimbor, is a bit more animated. He's a bit more, you know what I mean? He's not as
childlike in a way.
He kind of reminds me, and this is not an insult, he kind of reminds me more of Ian Holmes' performance as Bilbo. He's got some strong Bilbo vibes. He's like, the first thing he wants to do is let's open up some first age wine. You know what I mean? Like, he's totally got that, like,
my own heart.
Yeah, right. And so seeing Charlie Vickers do this very opposite performance is so powerful on screen, because you've got this tug of war going on. That as an audience member just draws you in, and it creates this tension without having anyone have to say anything. Just there's this physical, difference between the two of them that is so compelling to watch.
It's amazing how his like bland, expressionless face conveys so much emotion, or conveys so much information. Where it's like he just stands there and he's like, there isn't like a blink in his eye, or there isn't I don't know. It's just he's. And again, I think sometimes one maybe thing that I might have said against this was I think it looks like he's wearing a little bit too much makeup in some scenes that I may have that might have caught me out a little bit. But maybe it's just because when I see him, his face, it just looks like he's, I don't know, completely injected it with too much Botox or something. And he's got no movement in his face, but it's like it works. It's just like, that's and again. Menacing. I mentioned this as well in our podcast from, was it last week's episode or the week before, when Mirdania, she puts on the ring and she goes invisible, and then she realizes that she said, I saw this thing, and she said something like his eyes were full of he was merciless, and he was, I can't remember what it was exactly.
Pitiless eyes.
Pitiless. That was it exactly. Yeah, perfect. And in that shot, you could see it was an over the shoulder shot of Mirdania, and you could see in center frame was Charlie Vickers as Anatar, and his eyes were just black, pitiless. And he's just expressionless as well. And I was just like, he's just standing there looming like this kind of, I don't know, this monster. And I just think every episode it's just getting better and better. And yeah, I'm really, really digging his performance this season.
Yeah, I just wanted to note as well when we were talking about the hammer and the fact that maybe it was just a trick of the mind where he made it like kind of disappear for Celebrimbor for a second and then reappear. I feel like we've talked about a lot of his manipulation tactics in previous episodes, but this is like a new thing that we've seen, that he's possibly playing all these tricks of the mind, making things disappear or reappear in different places just to kind of mess with Charlie, or just to mess with Celebrimbor. And it's almost kind of like a placebo effect, where the more you think you're going insane, the more you're allowing your brain to actually become a little bit insane, a little bit crazy, but just like little by little. And I do feel like one thing that we complain about in this TV show is how things get rushed, but this is one storyline that I think they're actually really nailing, because they're drawing things out. They're giving this type of manipulation an episode, then they're upping the style of manipulation to another episode, and now he's manipulating other characters, and I think it's really good. And another thing as well that we hear Celebrimbor say, until the 9 are complete, nothing else matters. And that's a quote from Celebrimbor, which just goes to show, like, it was only an episode ago where
Metallica.
Nothing else matters. Yeah, it was only an episode ago, or I think maybe 2. Yeah, I think it was in the last episode where he was basically like, no, we're not making 9 rings. But this just goes to show, between the passage of time in between those 2 episodes, how much he's been manipulated, where now he's saying nothing else matters. These rings are the only thing that's important. So I thought that was I think that was
two episodes ago, Dave. Because,
2 episodes,
yeah, you're right, because in the first episode when we broached the topic of the 9 rings, one thing that like kind of I was taken aback by was the fact that on 3 separate occasions Celebrimbor rejected Anatar and said no, we're not doing this. And he stood firm. And I kind of, like you, thought, because everything else is kind of flowing along at a very, very rapid pace, I was like, oh, he's going to cave in at the very first moment. And I loved how he was able to, it showed his knowledge, his wisdom, and his level as a high elf as well, that he is he is Lord Celebrimbor, he's the Lord of Eregion. And he didn't just get there because it's like, oh, whatever, this guy is like, he is,
he's not a Nepo elf. Yeah, right. He got there. He earned it.
He earned it.
So Anatar then sees to the dwarves' tardiness with Mithril. We get a little glimpse of the statue of Feanor holding a Silmaril outside of the forge, which I thought was quite cool. And then we get to see an elf messenger that washes up with a message carved into him. Anatar demands that he is buried without anyone seeing, even Lord Celebrimbor. And then we're told that this is black speech for "where is he?" Now, I don't know why Anatar actually translates this for Myrdania, because, you know, she obviously can't read black speech, and I'm assuming now lots of elves can't read black speech, because she looked quite puzzled when he said this is what it means.
Sure.
So yeah, Chase, what did you make of this scene? Everything around it.
Yeah, I was, and this is a very personal taste thing. I thought it was a little weird for the elves to have just a dead body in the middle of the town square, like barely covered up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just like, we just wheeled them in. I'm like, that seems sort of, they seem like a people that would be a little more respectful of this dead body and maybe would have transcribed it onto something to show him, as opposed to check it out on the body, or, you know, whatever. Again, this is me nitpicking. But I did like that we are seeing Adar, you know, making some moves and letting him know, like, I know where you are, man. I know you're there. I did think it was very weird that he gave her the true translation of what that said. You would think that he would not tell her that he would put something else in there to sort of, you know, distract or whatever. But it may be also this point that he's like, there's nothing any of them can do now. I'm here. I've manipulated all of you. At this point, there's nothing any of you can do to stop what's already going to happen. So maybe that's why he's just like, here you go, I'll tell you. But yeah, other than that, I thought the scene was great. Like, obviously, anytime Charlie gets to have a little moment and say the last line and then walk off camera, you know, it's so cool. You're just like, man, that guy is just like awesome.
That guy is totally cool. I did feel like it felt more like he was telling the audience the title of the episode, or, you know, translating for the audience.
Oh yeah.
But
what
it
does
is
it
cool
say? It says the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
Yeah. Episode 6, scene 7. No, I was thinking when he walked off,
Prime.
I wanted them to pull out wider, and so that there's another elf next to Myrdania being like, God, that guy is cool.
Yeah.
And then just continue
Hansel
on.
is so hot right now.
Yeah, so hot. Yeah. Just Will Ferrell, the elf.
Yeah.
It was cool how he did try to turn, you know, he is turning Myrdania and others against Celebrimbor, like, with slight digs where it's like, look, he's not well, but we'll take care of him. Just, you know, you need to look after him, all that kind of stuff. It's just lovely manipulation. So I'm really digging Anatar. I'm actually, maybe a season or maybe a year or two ago, I was like, I just hope they don't butcher the Anatar storyline. And then we kind of got to see the snippets in the trailers, and I was like, okay, let's hope they do it justice. Now I'm surprised at how good they're doing. It's actually beyond my expectations. So
same here.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think that's kind of across the board. Everyone's figuring that. By the way, guys, I wanted to mention the guard that talks to Halbrand. I was about to call him Anatar. The guard that talks to him and shows him the dead body. When I paused on Amazon Prime, you know, the way you get the little, like, Amazon X or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, the X-ray vision.
X-ray vision thing. Yeah, this guy's name was Commander Melendol, and I just did a quick Google to see if that was a Tolkienian name at all, and it shows up in Lord of the Rings Online, so he's a character on that game. So
I play that game. I should go find him. I wonder if he's in the ruins of Eregion in that game. That'd be cool.
I think he's actually. He's based in Mirkwood, or he's in that general area. I don't play the game, but that's cool. Just another level of nerdiness that they fished out that name. So I thought that was cool. But anyways,
cool.
This whole scene ends with a gorgeous shot of Anatar staring out at the sun and seeing some orc smokes in the forest in the distance. But now we move on to who Anatar is looking at, and we get a nice little dinner spread of some barely cooked meats and raspberries and blueberries. And do you know what? Again, on my second watch of this, I paused it just to, like, look at all the different food, and I thought it was actually. It details that the orcs are obviously hunting, as they normally do, but they're also foraging, because now they're in the forest, so they're getting berries. So I was like, that's actually quite a cool detail. But Chase, I want to get onto you for this because just like the first meeting of Adar and Galadriel in season 1, we immediately get thrown into this Dutch angle shot. So I thought it was a great callback. We get the camera like tilted on its side. So again, you are Mr. Actor Movie Man. So I want to get your take on this scene.
Yeah, anytime a Dutch angle is used, it's either to forebode something is about to go awry or askew, or to just unsettle you. It's very unsettling when you see it like that, and it lets us know. And if you notice, they usually skew it in favor of Adar being in the upper left-hand corner, or where they're skewing it. He's in the higher part of the frame, not the lower, to sort of establish that like he is in control here. And they'll always kind of put her a little lower in frame when he's around to make him seem more imposing. I love that shot, and it's funny you mentioned the forging. I almost wonder if because he's an elf, or was an elf, that the berries are them gathering it for him. I don't think the orcs eat any of that stuff. I bet you they're eating just like slop and stuff like that. But because of who he is, he's like, I'm still on my elf diet. I'll have some meat too. You can bring me that. I don't know if either one of you ever saw the great 80s film Legend, starring Tom Cruise and Tim Curry, but there is a scene in that movie that totally mirrors this, where Tim Curry as Darkness, or the devil, is sitting at this big elaborate table, and he's got all this food, and this princess is on the other end of it, and he's trying to get her to eat. He's trying to seduce her and be like, hey, look, I'm just like you. I like chicken, you know? Like, I'm just a cool guy. But I this scene made me kind of think of that in this way, that he's sort of being like, look, you know, you're not my prisoner, you're my guest, as long as you will help me out here. And also just establishing him as being like, you know, once an elf, always an elf, because that dude likes to eat in style. And I like that he is, especially for an original character, as much as all the trolls on the internet can say whatever they want about this show, you can't not like Adar. He's so good. And the fact that he's an original character really is a testament to Patrick and JD and the writers, the whole team there, for really doing their homework and picking just such an interesting character. You know, I never would have thought of being like, oh, what if we showed a prototypical orc, you know, the first Uruk, and drawing from the lore of that they were once elves that had been tortured and manipulated into this other form. And I think that he, you know, and Sam Hazeldine to step into this role that once belonged to someone else, not an easy thing to do. And he is just nailing it. He nails it. I would say him and Charlie Vickers, this season especially, are the two people that whenever they're on screen, I am just like, no notes, 10 out of 10. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually, for me, a couple of actors have not swayed me, but have made me like them so much more just from this episode alone. So we will get into that. But Johnny, I want to hear your thoughts on this a little bit more within the scene, because, well, first of all, I'll just go through it here. We hear the line, his eye bores a hole and the rest of him slithers in, which I think we heard in the trailer. Yeah, yep, love it.
I had that written down, actually. Yeah.
I wanted to make note of that because it's awesome. Apparently Sauron promised Galadriel an army and promised Adar some children. And he gets a little bit offended when she uses the word orc and corrects it to Uruk. So, Johnny, I want to get your thoughts on that. But just before you come in, I want to also throw in the fact that we get to see Morgoth's crown, and it's confirmed as Morgoth's crown. So, yeah, what do you think about this whole bit?
There's a lot to get into there. Sorry, yeah. So, first of all, just to go back to the actor that Sam, what's his
Hazeldine.
Hazeldine. I was a bit iffy about him, not about the actor. I was. For the first few episodes, again, we didn't get loads of time with Adar in this season so far. I feel like Joseph Maul did such an amazing job in season 1 that it was so difficult to kind of, and it's probably the same with most situations where they have an actor that just kind of replaces another actor for the same role. So
Joseph Maul was almost standout from season 1.
He was probably the standout. I would say
hardest to replace.
Exactly. But also because Joseph Maul, he has quite a long face, and then also he had lots of prosthetics on and things like that. So I felt like they were almost putting extra prosthetics on Sam's face to make him look both like Adar and also like Joseph Maul. And basically nearly every time he was on camera up until this episode, all I could do was really kind of focus on the prosthetics. And I was kind of going, that's not Joseph Maul. You know, I especially like the very first time we got him speaking this season, I remember being like, wow, his voice is almost impersonating Adar from season 1, and it sounds perfect. It sounds so good. So, and he's got a lot of presence with his voice as well. It sounds fantastic. So this was the first episode where I've seen him on screen, and I've just been like, there's Adar. I wasn't like looking at the actor. I wasn't looking at anything like that. And so that was really, really good. This whole scene was class. I wrote down that quote. I wrote down the full thing, which was when he says, but sooner or later, he sees you, not just who you are, but who you wish to be. His eye bores a hole and the rest of him slithers in. And I was like, that is just such, like the last couple of episodes as well. We've just seen the writing kind of take a little bit of an extra step up, and there's been loads of parts where I'm just like, that sounds quite like Tolkien. That sounds like, so... but just the whole idea of slithering into a... maybe not that. Maybe not that. I just thought it felt
like very strong and fantastical. Like, so it felt like good writing. It didn't.
I
there
agree.
is a lot of very Tolkienian things in this episode, but please continue.
That's what I was meaning to say, and you cleared that up perfectly. So thanks for that. But what else? Morgoth's crown. That was class. Also, there was a little thing that when he laid it down on the table, it was almost like when the ring gets dropped to the floor in Bag End.
The weight of it.
You feel the weight of it. Yeah. So that was another thing. I was just like, oh, that sounds like a big meaty crown that just would have been sitting on top of Morgoth's head. So that's really cool. And he also had it refired, they said. So it's just going to get these shoes resized, sir. And so it's nice. So that was cool. And you said something else, and I can't remember what it was.
Just I said as well. She calls him an orc, and he corrects it to Uruk.
Oh yeah, so that was like that was a throwback to season 1, because that happened as well in season 1, where she kept calling him orc when the tables were turned, where he was her prisoner. She called him orc, or she spoke about orcs in general a few times, and every time she said the word orc, he corrected her to saying Uruk. So I believe that in this episode, that was a little callback, and then later on she refers to him as an Uruk, and it's kind of like he's finally got her to come around to his way of seeing things a little bit as well. So he's definitely doing his own manipulation in this episode, and again, it was so good to see, and really, really one of the stronger scenes in this. And as you said, just that Dutch angle just like makes you feel so uneasy, and kind of that skewing the power and all that kind of stuff.
I wanted to ask you guys a question, and correct me if I'm wrong. In the Silmarillion, I could have sworn that the crown of Morgoth was then turned into a collar. Didn't they turn it into that to chain him when they brought him in? So I don't know. Was there an episode? I know the first one where we see Sauron's other fair form. Did he mention having it like reforged into a crown, or are we just supposed to assume that he took the collar and I don't know how he would have gotten it, but yeah.
So you're right. Like in the Silmarillion, this is how the story goes, and it's interesting because Galadriel says Morgoth's crown. I thought that, and then she kind of fades out, and she's interrupted, and Adar goes, there's a lot of stories of how this crown came to be, but it was refired. But
cool.
The original, so like basically that was their way of covering up this story. Like they probably didn't have the rights to tell it, but as the story goes, the Iron Crown, as it's called, which was Morgoth's crown, it bore 3 Silmarils, and he had them placed in kind of like Thanos' gauntlet. Like he had little sections, and he popped them in, and then
he loved the bedazzle stuff.
Oh, he loved
which was the Silmarillion, which was the Silmaril of time.
Yeah, exactly. Rewind this.
And the Soul Silmarillion. But anyways, Morgoth was defeated by the Valar in the first age, and then basically, you're right, his crown was beaten into a collar to be put around his neck for imprisonment. So, but I also imagine Morgoth to be absolutely ginormous. So maybe it was beaten into a crown because Sauron refires this to turn it back into a crown for his size. So maybe it was beaten into a collar and then reforged again.
One thing I was just thinking about, and not to spend too much time on this, but it actually calls back to season 1 where Adar says, you've been told many lies about this Middle Earth. I almost wonder if it's his way of being like, because you elves, even you guys embellish and all these things, the legends of this thing. And maybe he's just like, all these things that you hold as the gospel is like, it's not true. You guys didn't knock it into a collar. You couldn't find it. I found it, or we had it. You never had it. And so it's a nice story to tell the elves that you guys chained him with his own crown. But it just didn't happen. You know what I mean? And that's kind of cool that Adar is just like, guys, look, even you guys are not as honest as anyone else.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, it was a cool scene, and then we get on to a scene of Numenor. Now, Chase, I don't know if you've been listening to any of our podcasts, but this is something that I've... Oh, yeah. Awesome. But the Numenor scenes are usually the one that have let me down the most. Even the most recent episode, everyone was oogling and ogling about how amazing it was, but I just felt like the Numenor scenes just dropped it. But I have to say, this was probably some of my favorite Numenor stuff, so I don't know if it's going to be the same with you guys, but we get an incredible opening shot of Numenor and the palace, and then immediately we get to see Elendil is on trial for his crimes. He's ordered to renounce his crimes, and we get a name drop of Elendil, son of Amandil, which I thought was great. But cool. This whole thing, I think it was a great scene, but especially Johnny, I'll ask you if you have anything to say about that scene, but the next scene is the one I want to talk about more, where he basically goes all in for Miriel. Oh no, sorry, this is in the same scene, where he goes all in for Miriel, daughter of Tar Palantir, the true ruler of Numenor. What did you think of this whole setting? I know we've been in this bloody courtroom a million times, but what did you think?
Yeah, I only wrote down one thing for this entire scene, and I just said Pharazôn not very kingly. I've been complimenting the costume department all season, and mainly I've been directing all of that at Pharazôn. I think he's just looked so elegant, so kind of like over the top elegance, especially in the last episode when it opened up and we saw that he had finally become our Pharazôn, when he had finally become the king. He was holding the scepter. He had this just like awesome cloak over it. Like there was silver and dark blues mixed together. Here, he just looks like
a commoner.
He looks like a commoner. I'm looking at the image now, and over his shoulder, he's got his son Kemen, who looks probably a little bit better dressed, and then he's got his right hand man. It's literally standing on his right hand.
Belzegar, isn't it?
Belzegar is his name. Yes, of course. So, and he's even wearing this kind of little, I don't know, necklace looking thing, which looks a bit more. He's wearing a little bit more bling, and he just looks a bit more kingly, I suppose. So, I don't know. For me, that was just something that I was just used to seeing Pharazôn look a little bit more, I suppose, royal in what he wears. So that was one thing. Apart from that, I think Elendil has just been the main. Elendil and Pharazôn are just holding Numenor together, as in meaning like
the storyline.
They're literally at war with each other.
yeah. They're best.
They're
friends,
tearing it apart.
So, but like as in when we've said that for us, the Numenor scenes, and I would agree with you, Dave, that they've probably been the weaker part of the show. Maybe the Stores. But as opposed to like when you're coming in with like a Region and you've got then Khazad-dûm as well, and all of these amazing just set pieces, and it's just great story, great writing. And then Numenor has kind of been a little bit dragging behind. I just feel like the presence of these two actors who play Pharazôn and Elendil, they're bringing their A game every single time they're on screen. It's like you can't take your eyes off them. They just draw the camera. And I think Elendil's performance here as well, when he kind of... Now, again, this scene, and then also joined together with the next scene when Miriel comes into the cell and she's like, please just accept whatever. It really gave me like Braveheart kind of feels, I suppose, where it's like, just say this and, just say mercy, and then he'll give you the whatever, he'll just give you the swift death and that'll be fine. It seemed like this, and he's kind of like, the same as William Wallace, he's like, what am I without my honor? I mean, that's what it's all about. And it felt the same here as well. And just when he finally was like, do you accept your crimes? He's like, I do. Do you accept the king? I do not. I was like,
I thought that was a nice slow roll there.
Yeah.
But before we move on to the next scene, Chase, I just want to hear your thoughts on this scene as well, like, because I liked the inclusion of the Faithful's tradition, because we get to see Pharazôn talking about, if you want to live by the valor, then you should also die by the valor. So I thought that was pretty cool. But do you think it's odd that Pharazôn would humor their traditions, or do you think he's kind of mocking them a little bit?
I think the whole thing is because his right-hand man, I can't remember what that character's name is. Belzegar, book-carrying guy. I was like, I felt so bad for that actor. I'm like, man, that book, I hope it's not as heavy as it looks, because he's just like clutching that thing in every scene. Everyone else is like, what should I do with my hands? He's like, I got no choice. I'm carrying this. But I think it was calculated in the sense that he's like, well, as we'll see, the sea creature is going to eat you. So it's like, he's like, yeah, no, this is perfect. Let's keep going that way. You want to be the faithful? Great. You've walked right into my trap, which is if you're going to live by them, you're going to die by them. So I feel like that's calculated. And what I was going to say though, the one thing that is also driving me nuts about Numenor, and again, I understand it's a television show. We're willing to stretch our beliefs for so many things. Every time Muriel walks into a room unaccompanied, I'm like, this woman is blind. And she is just like coming in and like feeling her way through. I'm like, this woman used to be the Queen Regent. You can't get her a guide, you know what I mean? Like a seeing, a guy just to hold her arm or like anything, a walking stick. I feel so bad for her. Also, I'm like, how does this woman not know she's just coming into a random room of like peasants being like, Elendil, da-da-da-da-da-da, and some guy like, no, that's that jail cell there. Okay, sorry. And then she goes over there. Like that bothers me every time because I'm like, it would be very hard for her to get around alone.
Also, do you remember when she first became blind and she was like in the bow of the ship and she was like pacing over and she got the count wrong or something and Elendil corrected her. He was like, it's actually 8 paces from it. So even Elendil knew the steps more than the blind person, where like when you can see, you don't really think about that kind of stuff. But he knew his ship perfectly and he knew it better than her, even though I don't know.
That's
so
cool.
She wasn't
That's
that
cool
fast
details.
of a learner in that moment. It was a cool detail. I liked it at the time. But yeah, you're right that she kind of just waltzes in and she's like, so I know everyone who's in here and I know what's going on.
I know where you
here's
are.
my plan to kill Farazad. Oh, sorry, is that you, Farazad?
Yeah, she's talking to the wall and he's just like, okay, trying to get in there. But I do think this was a stronger episode for Numenor. I think part of the problem is this. We all know that there were some scenes cut for this season for time. Or I don't know if that's common knowledge, but I'm pretty sure it is that everyone knows.
I learned that last week.
Okay, so yeah, so that's part of the issue. And it's like, look, it's a huge show. There's a lot of things to tackle. And so I try to be understanding of a production like this that is trying to operate and get all these things in and doing what's best for the show. Because to be fair, if getting more Numenor time that would make that better would take away from our time with Celebrimbor, I would say no, then do this. I like what they're doing because we got so little time with Celebrimbor in season 1. It is really just, again, a testament to season 2 being so much better that by the end of this season, we will have come to go from like, I don't know who this guy is, to being like, I really care for him. I really feel for him. I feel for what he's going through. And that's not easy to do with a character in one season, halfway through, in 5 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chase, you actually brought it up there. I was going to ask you, I didn't write it down, but about Muriel's scene, she's playing a blind woman, and I'm just a little bit curious since, as an actor, how do you think this works? Or do you think she's doing a really good job? Because for me, I'm always like so invested in like, yeah, she is a blind woman now. So like, I feel like the acting is great on her behalf.
Yeah. I think Cynthia's awesome, and she's a wonderful human being. And I'll never trash an actor, even if I did think she was doing bad. I would never do that. But in this case, I don't have to even pretend because she's doing a great job, especially given the fact that, like I said, she has no person to be guiding her in to sort of have that extra sort of crutch, if you will, as an actor. Like, oh, cool, I've also got this thing because like. There's so many things as an actor you can disguise things under. Being able to eat food in a scene makes you seem so much cooler and makes things like more interesting. Like, wow, these choices you're making, but it's like, no, I'm using the food. And so she doesn't have any of that. It's really just up to her. And if you, the best comparison I can draw as another show would be Daredevil. Like Daredevil, the guy's got to be blind the whole time. And I think that's another Charlie, isn't it? Isn't that actor's name Charlie?
Yes. Well, the what's his name again?
I feel I'm embarrassed that I don't remember his name, but he's great, and he does a very good job of when he's in scenes and you see his eyes. He sort of just I think he said in an interview he just lets his focus go so soft that he can't see anyone anyway, and so you're just using your ears.
I was going to ask you that, like, just have you ever been in a situation where you've acted alongside someone who is playing a blind person or something? Is there any pointers that you're given? Is it like, okay, here
she's always staring dead ahead, so
I know, but because I'm always staring at her eyes just to look for a bit of a flicker, as if something, because the normal eye movement of any human is like you're having a conversation with somebody and just a bit of light flashes in the corner, your eye just kind of like, without you thinking, it just kind of flicks over to it for a second, and we never see any of that with her. Her eyes are just like stone, like just dead center, and kind of just like not really looking at anything, always looking like she's looking a million miles into the distance, and it's fantastic. And I was kind of wondering, is there someone been like, you know, with an apple just standing in the back, like, just look at this apple over here for the entire scene?
I don't think they do that. I think she's probably done her, like any actor would probably do her homework. I don't even think they probably had like a consultant. Sometimes you'll do that. You'll bring someone in and be like, hey, you know, here are some things that you would do. Or maybe she knows a person who has, you know, has lost their vision and has consulted with them, but like, hey, would you mind if I pick your brain about a few things? And maybe you could tell me, or just observing, you know, simply observing. But for the most part, I think she's, you know, that's all her. I don't think she needs anything to look at as an actor. I'm sure she's just like, okay, I'm going to use my ears in this scene, and I'm just going to pick a point, and I'll just let my focus go soft. And if you do that, it sells it. It sells it right there. And also, you know, good camera work. You know, making sure that there aren't a lot of things flying by her that the normal eye would react to. And
I'm sure it's like a million takes as well, where they're like, okay, well, we got to go again.
Or I wonder, or who knows, maybe she's just so dialed in that they don't have to do that. Maybe that's why scenes got cut. They're like, look, it's taking a lot of time because this blind stuff is hard. But no, I think she's doing a great job. I agree. I just wish they would, for believability's sake, is just have someone there to guide her around. Would be nice. Yeah.
I wonder if before you get like laser eye surgery, do they like numb up your eye or something, or is there some like injection they could give you that they could probably do something similar in a scene like this? You know,
well, I can't remember what actor it was. One actor wanted to do something nuts. I know. Someone can fact check me on this. I think at one point there was a conversation where Tom Cruise for Born on the 4th of July was like, give me some like injections in my legs so that they're numb and then I can't feel them. And they were just like, no, Tom. Like, love the commitment. Really great idea. We're going to go with no, because we have to insure you. And so all this stuff. But I'm pretty sure there was another actor. Who was it? Was it Val Kilmer in At First Sight? It was someone who literally was just like, give me like, put like messed up contacts in my eyes so that everything is blurry, so I can't see anything anyway. I can't remember if it was him or someone else. But someone tried to do that, and they were like, look, we can do it. You cannot do this for more than like an hour or two a day, because it over time will damage your eyes. Like, you will just, it's very bad. It also gives you splitting headaches.
So spray some hot sauce in there as well.
Right, just to step it up. Yeah. He's just like, here, someone give me a concussion. I want to say it was him. Someone can fact check that, but they may have given her something to help numb those things up.
Possibly. I'm absolutely loving hearing all these tidbits. They're absolutely great. But we will come back to Numenor as well, because there's more scenes there. But the next thing is a sudden vision from the stranger. And Johnny, I don't know if you have many thoughts of this, but what we get to see when you actually slow down all the clips is we get to see Nori and Poppy are being captured. Then we see what looks like giant stones falling from, I assume, the stars. It's the sky, but the stars are very clearly lit up in this. Charlie Cox. That was
yes.
Daredevil.
Oh my God! Wow. First, I thought you were having like a Tourette's moment, and you were just yelling out, and I was like, okay,
sorry.
Like, pause the podcast. Dave, you okay?
Charlie Cox. You're right. I knew it was a Charlie
Cox. Yeah, that's great.
Anyways,
good grab. That was great.
Back to this, Johnny. We get stones falling from the stars, and they're really lit up, and then we get like maybe 2 shots of the Dark Wizard, and he looks like he's fighting or he's doing something with his hand. But and then immediately it cuts to the stranger, and he's like, you know, speaking with Tom Bombadil. But did you have any thoughts on his vision, or do you think this is just more mumbo jumbo nonsense that the show is throwing at you?
No, I think some are literal, and I think some are metaphors for what is going to come, maybe later in this season, maybe next season. But I think that he's having, in my opinion, this whole section of this episode is really calling back to Empire Strikes Back. Tom Bombadil is his Yoda, and he's having these visions. My friends are in trouble. I need to go help Han and Leia back, because he's having these visions, and he even tells him, if you go and you do this, you can't ever come back. And it's the same thing Yoda tells Luke, which is, you can leave now and not finish your training, and Vader is going to defeat you, but that's it, man. You can't come back. But it's exactly what both of them need to hear to go do the thing that they're meant to do. And I thought that was interesting. And obviously, I mean, look, I would be I find it hard to believe that JD and Patrick aren't Star Wars fans as well. And so I'm sure there was some intention there to reference that. But I love this. I love the stranger having these visions and sort of wanting to be like, I got to get to my friends. I got to get to my friends. And Tom being like, do you? Because you failed everything else up until this point, and this next choice you're about to make is crucial. But with again, Tom being very vague and always speaking in riddles, you don't know if he's pushing him one way or the other.
It's actually very funny that you bring up the comparisons with Star Wars, because in this very same scene, we'll get into it a little bit more in a second. I might ask Johnny about it, but we do get the mention of the secret fire. And yes. I thought we hear the secret fire whispers to us if we have ears to hear. This is what Tom Bombadil says. So I think they're basically kind of using the secret fire as the Force, and you don't master the secret flame, you serve it. So obviously these are big Gandalf callbacks, but I feel like this is like this show's version of the Force, which I think is pretty cool. Well, we may as well get into it. Johnny, do you have any, you're back, no more connectivity issues, we're all good, you can hear me?
Beautiful.
Awesome.
So I can hear you, yeah.
The secret fire, this is in the book, it's an aspect of Eru, which is basically his power of creation, but
flame imperishable.
Exactly, flame imperishable. So what were your thoughts of this little name drop? Twice we got it.
Yeah, I didn't think, I mean, that's an awesome like kind of thing that you're saying. It's almost like using the Force in Star Wars, and I really like that. And I'm going to just keep thinking that going forward now. So that's great. It's kind of that's going to improve my viewing experience from now on, I think.
That's my own analysis.
I suppose I was surprised to hear something that I didn't expect to hear like that. Like the same as when he dropped the names of like Baron and Tur in the last episode. I was just kind of going, oh, do they have the rights to that? And I think that they do. I think it turns out that maybe in the scene during the Council of Elrond, I think maybe those names are mentioned. So they would have the rights to that because it falls within the Lord of the Rings. And maybe this as well, I suppose. I know that Gandalf says that he's the servant of the secret fire as well. So, but I suppose just for me as like being a Tolkien geek at the moment, it's kind of when I think of like the secret fire or like the flame of honor or the flame imperishable, as we said, it's kind of like I just think of Silmarillion kind of stuff, and so it kind of just caught me for a moment, and I don't know, I enjoy hearing it, but I didn't really go into the next deep level like you guys, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I just want to read a little something here, which is the flame imperishable is something owned only by God, an essence of life. God made the world, and quote, secret fire sent to burn at the heart of the world. So Tolkien told Clyde S. Kilby that the secret fire here is actually a reference to the Holy Spirit. So I thought this is kind of interesting. If people don't know, Tolkien's his whole life is based in Christianity, and he talked about not having allegory in a lot of his books, but you can see it's similar to C.S. Lewis. It's a lot of it is kind of Christian based. I don't want to say, I don't want to get into religion and politics and stuff, but like we can see a lot of his Christian message in the works of in his books, and I think it's actually interesting that the show is possibly going into a little bit of this in this episode, not only with the secret flame, the secret fire, but also just a lot of talk about Elendil and the faithful. And I thought a lot of this was kind of similar to Tolkien's message. I just thought it was really interesting because that's what a lot of people are complaining with. The haters especially are like, this is death to Tolkien, it's not what he would have wanted. So I do think the inclusion of the secret fire was very interesting for that reason. But I'll just move on with a little bit of Tom Bombadil, because I thought his little introduction into this episode was hilarious, where he goes, "Who's snoring?" That was my little giggle of the episode. So I love that, and I love the way we get follow old Tom for he'll show you, and I'm enjoying him. We didn't get enough of him in this episode, but Chase, what do you think? Obviously we don't know your thoughts on Tom Bombadil, but really briefly, are you liking him? Are you liking Rory Kinnear's performance?
Yeah, I mean, look, I talk about, I think this is probably the second hardest, if not the hardest role to tackle outside of Anatar because there's a lot of anticipation. There's been people that have been wanting to see this character on screen for over 20 years. You know, we saw the original trilogy with Peter, and, you know, I'm in the minority here that thinks it was for the better of the film to cut Tom Bombadil out because I think that without context of all the explanation of, you know, Gandalf explaining who he is, as an audience member, you'd be like, "What? This guy makes no sense." And that's
Do you
kind
think that's a minority?
People who think that he shouldn't have been in the movie.
Yeah, I would say the opposite. I would say that most people, like Tolkien fans as well, will say I think that was probably a good call for a movie.
Oh, okay.
Because
I
don't know, but I could be way off.
50-50.
I think maybe if you're like a hardcore fan, and maybe it's just because Twitter's algorithm is so evil, it just wants to show me people hating things. And so they're like, yeah, they didn't do this and blah, blah, blah. You know, people get so mad about it. And I'm like, look, man, you have to realize this is an adaptation. And that word is the key there. It is not a one-to-one. And so with Tom Bombadil, I think Rory Kinnear's performance is great because you're like, okay, how would you do this? Because the character in the book is tonally so different from the rest of the story that you're like, this could be so campy and so cheesy if he does it. My only criticism of Tom Bombadil in the show isn't so much about performance or anything like that. And again, this is my personal taste. I think that what the showrunners are doing is within their world and their rules of their world. Mm-hmm. But what I love about Tom in the books is that he's, for lack of a better word, an agent of chaos, right? He's not on either side. He's just like, I just am what I am. I'm a glitch in the matrix. You know what I mean? Everyone else has things. And I don't think I was, you know, intentionally. He's like, and I've been here since, you know, again, the first raindrop. And also, I love that line, by the way.
That was amazing.
And then his episode, I got choked up hearing him talk about that when he's like, I'm eldest and all that. Because you're like, you are. He is this guy that is sort of, he was born in the machine, you know? But what I was going to say is I don't like in the show that he sort of is serving a very specific purpose, which is I'm here to get you ready, stranger, for what is to come. And I'm like, no, because Tom doesn't answer to the Valar. He doesn't answer to any of that stuff. He does his own thing. And so I think, then again, this is my preference. I think as an audience, though, it's great to have him probably, you know, if you're someone who's not familiar with the books, this is probably easier to wrap your mind around it. I think if you were to throw him in and make him just purely what he was in the books, people would be like, what is happening? This is like a shroom dream. This man is singing.
Yeah.
What is Dairy Doll? What a ring-a-ding-dillo? What? And I'm supposed to take this guy seriously? He's got yellow boots and a blue jacket. This dude can't even color coordinate. Why am I taking him seriously? But I think visually in the show, I love it. I love that he went with the Cornish accent. I think that's a Cornish accent. And I love it. And I think he's got a really tough task. And I think Rory Kinnear is rising to the occasion.
Yeah,
he's smashing.
Absolutely. Johnny, I want to ask you about we'll skip the store scene for now. Don't worry, I'll come back for 2 minutes.
We don't have to.
Whatever. Yeah.
We don't have to. Yeah.
Well, just while we're on the subject of Tom Bombadil, because he only appears twice in this episode, he brings the stranger to where he says the Dark Wizard found his staff, and he says you'll find your true staff when the vision of your heart is singled to the service of the secret fire. And the stranger basically mentions that he must quickly find Nori or she will die. And this is kind of the Star Wars reference a little bit. But then Tom replies that many that die deserve life. Some that live deserve death. Who are you to give it to them? So Johnny, this is clearly a callback to what? And why are we seeing it?
Yeah. So if anybody doesn't know, well, I'm sure there's very few people that don't actually know what this is from. But this is from the scene in the Fellowship of the Ring when Gandalf is speaking to Frodo, and Frodo is saying that like it's a pity that Bilbo hadn't killed Gollum when he had the chance, and he's saying, he said it was pity that stayed his hand, and he said some that deserve death get life, and some that deserve life get death, and whatever. So, my first reaction to this was a big eye roll. I think, I think it could be fantastic for the context, and it could work really well. I just feel like it's almost nearly twice per episode at least you're getting this like a very obvious callback, which most of the time it's not landing, this, and I think this one, maybe if this was done in isolation, it could have landed very well. But for me now, when I'm hearing these things, it was the same in the last episode where we get the sunrise under a swift green country. Mm-hmm. It was like, it was a bit out of place, and it was like, I don't know if that fits in this moment, and it kind of just like, oh, you've just taken this text because we're like, oh, we have the rights to this little phrase here, let's just take it and plonk it in. And
it's also forcing the audience to, like, giving them clues to who this person is, and I'm like, I don't want the dialogue to be written as a big clue for who the stranger is, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's almost like we were clearly saying, I think from season 1, most people would say, if you had to go back and give the writer some notes in season 1, we'd say, just stop with the mystery boxes. We don't need that. This season, when we know who Sauron is and other people don't know who he is, that's just so much better TV. When you're like, oh, I know why he said that. I know why he's manipulating him. And because we're in on the gag, we're in on the bit, we know what's going on. But in season 1, Halbrand, I mean, a lot of us kind of knew or already were kind of like, he's definitely Sauron. But you didn't know for sure until like it was revealed. So you weren't always like, oh, that's really cool what he said there, because you know his double motivation. So it's so much better in this season when we know that that's what's happening. So I think the mystery boxes thing just didn't really work that much. And as you said, they're kind of keeping it going. Hopefully by the end of the season, when we finally get the name for the stranger, there's not going to be any more kind of mystery boxes thrown in front of us. So
there'll be a new one.
There'll be. Yeah. Actually, Galadriel is actually, I don't know, Calabrian. And there's something else. So for me, that line, unfortunately, it made me kind of eye roll. But then because as soon as he started saying that sentence, and then while he was like halfway through it, I was like, no, just sit back and let myself try and enjoy this moment where we've got Tom Bombadil on screen saying a cool line that was written by Tolkien. And I was trying to enjoy it, but yeah, I would say that I'm getting a little bit tired of just the obvious callbacks when there's no need for it to be.
It's just the context doesn't make sense, because he's talking about, like, basically, you're going to either do what I want you to do, your destiny, or else save your friends. So, like, you know, Gandalf says, many that live deserve death, some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? And it's used perfectly in the context when he's in Moria with Frodo, talking about Gollum and pitying him and everything. So, like, it's just, yes,
and Gollum, and Frodo wishing for death for another person.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Whereas
but this
in this
is
situation,
this is about, I want to save my friends.
Yeah, it's not desiring death upon someone, or So,
but anyways, Tom then kind of literally physically disappears after this. So
he Batmans him.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next scene, do you have any? Yeah, what do you think? Did you like this Batman, or?
I want to say, just to call back to what you were just mentioning, which is I really wish they would stop with the callbacks, because I don't know if it's a misinterpretation of the feedback from fans being like, we want more Tolkien. And they're like, all right, here you go. Here's literal Tolkien. But it's like we're referencing kind of the wrong thing. It's not that everyone wants Tolkien from the Lord of the Rings. We got that. We want Tolkien Silmarillion, because that's the time we're in. And also, I think it feels like a bit of a, and again, this is me, a personal thing. I don't want to criticize these people, are obviously professionals working and love this stuff. But it feels to me like an unnecessary fan service thing, and sort of a crutch where it's like, guys, the best writing, like we mentioned, that the line between, Adar at the dinner table saying, he bores into your eye and then like the rest of him worms his way in.
Yeah,
that is incredible, and that's compelling. These callbacks to this, just again, they make you want to roll your eyes, because they're out of place, and it feels like a wink and nod to the camera, and it takes me out of it. And look, I understand the intention there is good, but I really wish they would trust themselves more and just do what they're doing, because the original stuff that is inspired by Tolkien, I think, is more powerful in my opinion.
Is it a coincidence that nearly all of the callbacks, I suppose, are happening in the Harfoot storyline and the Harfoot and the Stranger? Because like to follow your nose, from episode 1. Then earlier when we found that they got lost, it's like we're going in circles and we've been here before. like all that
and
kind of stuff.
Tumbling down the hill. I think it's because that whole storyline is mystery box setting, and it's all about, is it this guy or is it this guy? Here's a clue. Here's some like little fire bugs, and
also
all that kind of stuff.
Also, to go back on something. Sorry to interrupt. One thing that you said there a moment ago, Chase, was that we want Tolkien, but maybe we don't want just what has already been done by Peter Jackson. We don't want to just see that rehashed and saying, here you go, you remember this line, here you go again. But, and I know they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. They have the rights to the Lord of the Rings. There's plenty of dialogue in that as well that could be like, okay, this would actually fit really well in this conversation. We have a conversation here between two elves. Let's go and search the Return of the King for a scene where, so they could find that and put it in. And first of all, as soon as you hear it, you would know that feels Tolkienian. That's one thing.
Right.
Second of all, if you're someone like us who just loves the books, we would know it straight away. We'd be like, oh, not only does it sound Tolkien, that is, we respect it even more. And it's like something that makes us kind of I always just smile sometimes when I hear that kind of stuff coming up. And it's just, it's just an extra level added in that I think would be fantastic. So we don't necessarily need to have the stories told from the Silmarillion, but we could just get some dialogue thrown in there. And they have the right.
Something we haven't seen. 100% agree with you. Yeah, totally. There's so much that was not tapped into in that original trilogy on screen that they could use.
Guys, I'm going to blast through this Stewart's plot here. So
can I just
really
mention,
quickly,
sorry, I didn't get to say anything about Tom Bombadil.
Okay, but be quick. We've got some really good scenes coming up that I want to discuss.
Okay, sorry. Just to be very, very fast. As I said, sorry. The only thing I said about him was that I had a little bit of an eye roll when he first said that, that kind of Gandalf quote. But I want to see a happier Tom. He wasn't like happy at all. There was no happiness and there was no singing in this episode. When we first saw him come in, I loved his little. I love that the Hey Doll, Mary Doll stuff was things that he was just kind of singing sillily to himself. And it wasn't that he was actually running around shouting at the top of his lungs. I was like, okay, it's a very, very cool, like subtle play with that where we're getting it, but it's also fitting in with this world where he's just like this outrageous character. So I thought it was brilliantly done. But I was like, just give us more scenes of him maybe being a bit happier and a bit jollier. And also, I agree with exactly what Chase said as well. He cares way too much about this storyline and about trying to get the stranger to follow his destiny. So,
definitely.
Sorry. That's what I want to say. We can now proceed.
You're right. I'm glad you brought it up because it is that is the problem with Tom Bombadil in this episode, that he is too plot orientated and focused on destiny and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Chase put it perfectly. He should just be an agent of chaos, and I love that. I love that.
He should be the wind, just blowing
beneath my wings.
Exactly.
Anyways, let's just blast through this storyline because I'm delighted that we only the storyline. Yeah, I'm delighted that we only got a small little scene of it. But anyways, let's talk about it. We see Nori and Gundabal chatting about leaving or not leaving. We see a pretty tree. The Gund, as she's kind of referred to sometimes, talks about Schmeals, which is actually the name in the book given to the Schmeals, which is what's the name of the hobbit holes that what the hobbits burrow into in their little hills, and so these are like the names of like burrows that go off in different directions, so like Bag End, for example. I thought the music was great for the stores. I really like their theme. I'm not happy that we're getting an introduction to new hobbits, but that's what they've decided to go with. And finally, we get Mary Mac, was only named 2 years ago, which I kind of thought was funny, and we get a kiss. So, guys, I don't know, do either of you want to chime in, but do you have any thoughts on this whole thing?
No.
The silence is deafening.
It's fine. It's fine. It's cute. I think it's cute. But this is an impossible task when you've got the two biggest characters in the Tolkien legendarium making rings, and you've got Tom Bombadil, and then the elves getting ready to go to battle, go into the tiny little, the not so grand canyon, and having these little people in there. It's really hard. I'm sure it's meant to break up sort of the seriousness so we can have some levity, but it does. It feels like it sort of kills a little bit of the momentum. But I think, look, if I want to talk about performance, all those actors know the assignment. They're doing a great job. I think they're all coming and totally committing to the world and to that. And I commend them for that. And I think also it's a personal taste. the last season, so many people were like, I can't stand the Harfoot storyline. And I'm like, man, I really enjoyed it. I had some criticisms about their contradictions as a group, but I loved any scenes they were in. I was like, yeah. I'm like, you guys are like, no one walks alone, but we will leave you. And like, we only got each other. We got to stick together. But if you do slow me down, I will leave you.
We will take your wheels.
We will fully disassemble your cart if it means getting somewhere quicker. But I love Markella Kavanaugh's performance. Mm-hmm. She's wonderful, and I'm glad it was brief. That's what I will say.
That's the best thing from this part. If I'm just going to say anything, I don't know what it is. I think it's in the last couple episodes. Maybe Nori, I think she's got a bit of a new haircut or something. Mm-hmm. I see way too much of the actress and not enough of Nori. And this never happened to me. This never happened to me in season 1. I was fully like, there's the character Nori, the Harfoot. And for some reason, I don't know what it is. I think it's, I'm not sure if it was the makeup or if it was just that her hair has changed and it just seems puffier now or something, but it seems like I'm kind of going, so when I saw her on screen the last 2 episodes, I've kind of been like, that's an actress playing a role. And I don't know why, just in those last 2 episodes, and I don't know why that's happened, but that's just one thing that that stood out to me. And apart from that, it was kind of strange where you see the scene with Tom Bombadil and then it cuts over to the stores and the leader, what's her name, the Gund, she has the same accent as Tom Bombadil. They both have this kind of Cornish accents, which I hadn't really picked up on before. But when you see them like one just back to back these scenes, I was like, why do they have the same accent? That's weird. I'm like, I know Tom's living in this area now, but he hasn't always lived there. That's not, and if he did, it doesn't matter. They wouldn't have the same accent. So it was kind of weird to me.
I picked up on that. I don't think it's the exact same accent. I think it's similar accents.
They're both West Country accents. But I will say that
Cornish
I
enjoyed older, I suppose.
Yeah, I did enjoy her little short story about how she had been born in this area and she was trying to explain to a Harfoot, this is a completely different kind of life that we lead. So I did quite enjoy that part from the store. So that was good. I don't really want to talk about the kiss between Poppy and Merrimack, so I think I'm just going to jump ahead.
I was happy it happened because we saw in the episode where they meet for the first time, they're starting to look at each other. I'm like, I'm not ready for a whole like, will they, won't they? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's great that they did it.
They will. So I'm glad that's over.
They did.
Anyways,
they will and they did.
Yeah. Okay, so we still have a good bit to talk about. So guys, dwarves mining away. We hear someone say, "Put your beard into it," which I really liked. And King Durin is getting rich. And then, of course, Anatar's arrival. Great entrance music. And then he offers to play a little bit of Settlers of Catan because he's like, I will offer some wood for your mithril. So I thought that was pretty cool. But what I want to hear about, we get the Precious name drop. He says, perhaps Khazad-dûm would prefer something more precious. I'm not going to tell you what I think. I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
It's because Charlie's so good, and this is the power of a good actor is that it didn't rub me the wrong way, the way that it would have maybe if someone had delivered it with maybe less of a deft hand. And also that dude just got so much presence when he comes in as an elf. It feels like Thranduil talking to Thorin again, but the tables are turned this time where it's like, he was coming to him for help. I need you to get me to the mountain or whatever. And Thranduil was like, oh, maybe I could help you, blah, blah. This is a cool way of saying, here's an elf now coming, being like, I need your help. And I love it. I love that he, again, someone who understands the assignment, Charlie walks into that room and he never looks down when he's walking. He never, he's always held up. He just feels like an elf. Yeah. So I loved that scene. And I loved the sort of misdirection there of Durin III refusing him. And you're thinking like, okay, this guy knows what's up. And he's like, no, because I'm going to shake him down later for more. And you're just like, no, that's actually the opposite of what you should be doing. He's like, no, I got this. I get these twice the timber out of these guys and maybe some stone. So I thought that was nice because they've done a great job. I just want to call out with Durin's descent. And I love that because it's talked about so briefly about the corruption of the other rings. I wanted to know, like, what do the other rings do? We know that, the 9, or that is the 1 can make you disappear. We know that, the elven rings were about healing and preserving, but the dwarven rings, I was like, what is it going to enhance? And I love that for him, it allows him to know where to dig, which is that great thing that, Tolkien used soft magic. It was never like hard rules of like, I put this ring on, I'm 25% stronger. It sort of enhances different parts of you at different times. And I love that. I think they're doing a great job with that, especially, again, another character we spent so little time with in season 1. We only see him showing up and getting angry and leaving. This kind of shows him as being a little more complicated, and someone that you pity, because you're like, you want to do the right thing, but this ring is destroying you.
Yeah, and people would often say, I've heard other content creators talking about how Durin the Fourth is the heart of the show, and we get a lot of emotional scenes again here. And you said you don't get 25%, extra strength, but we do get a little bit of that when his father pushes Durin away. So, Johnny, just to finish off this scene, we also we get a glimpse of Balrog in the flames. Obviously the disagreement between the two Durins, and then we get a switch to the great Disa and Durin scene where she says, that dwarf on the dwarf on that throne is not your father, and then Durin cries. And finally, sorry, before I get your thoughts on all this, we get when Narvi comes later to dig, and I felt like there was genuine tension between Disa and Narvi. It felt like a proper Mexican standoff, and we find out she is Batman, which is incredible. Durin arrives and he says, "I love you." So, Johnny, thoughts on all this?
Again, quite a lot happened there, but first of all, that scene again, Disa and Durin on screen together, they are fantastic, as they were in season 1. They just kill it every time they're together. Sorry, Chase, you said something as well a few moments ago about what's his name, Peter Mullen, and about how his performances have just been like I was trying to remember what you said that I was going to call back to. I can't remember now, but basically what I was going to say is that you kind of start to feel like, oh, this king's just kind of going mad, and you could easily start to like feel yourself being like, oh, now he's the bad character. Whereas Durin immediately says, that's still my father. Sorry, it was when you were saying about how you start to pity him and you feel sorry for him. Whereas I think it would be very easy for us to be like, okay, we obviously want Durin the Fourth to be able to do what he wants to do. We want that plot to go forward, and we want him to take off the ring. So he's evil, he's bad for keeping it and for not taking it off. But we should just be, it's pity, because we saw his true character in season 1, where he was just all about safety for his people. He was like, look, I don't care if there's a mountain of mithril down there. We just need to be careful. I don't care if I don't want one dwarf to get injured, because it's just not worth it. And now suddenly, and then as I say, Disa says, look, that's not your father up there. And Durin just like crying for his father and saying, I still see him in there and he's lost and we need to help him. So I thought that was beautifully done. I thought that was really excellent. And I felt like when Durin first started to weep, when there wasn't any build up, I was kind of going, oh, I don't really feel that emotion really. And I was like, oh, because it's usually worked so well with the dwarves before. And I felt like they kind of rushed into the weeping, but then he explained his emotion behind it. And I was like, okay, now I caught up with him eventually. I was like, okay, now I'm going to weep.
That's fair. Before I get on to the next scene, Johnny, just your thoughts on the Batman. Yeah. What do you think?
I'll let you go.
Look, I love Batman. He's Batman and Lord of the Rings, my 2 favorite franchises of all time. I have a couple issues with it. Again, this is me being nitpicky maybe, because it's such a tiny moment, and apologies to any writers watching this who are like, shut up. But it's sort of like, if that was her plan, if she knows that she can call out this thing, and look, maybe Disa, she's very attuned to the mountain, maybe she knows what she can do. Having the bats come out felt a little jumping the shark, if you will. Like, I was a little like, is this really happening? And 2, the idea of dwarves being afraid of bats sort of made me feel a little silly. I'm like, you guys have been digging in this cave for a long time. You tell me you haven't encountered some bats at some point. Also, when the bats clear out, wouldn't you just be like, all right, well, turn it around, let's go back. Like, have you got more bats? And that was it.
Exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was very easy to end the scene that way and go off. But I'm like, if we're going to look again, it's like it's a show. We got to suspend your disbelief a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I was sort of like, guys, you something else. I would have rather her been there and just like pulled up an axe and been ready to fight, which is what we see happen later anyway. I don't think we needed the.
That's what I thought was going to happen. That's why
I thought she was going to sing to the mountain and have like their path cut off, and that would have been a much longer issue for them.
Yeah. When my exact point was going to be what you just said there, Chase. The fact that I hadn't really thought. Okay, they've obviously encountered bats before, but basically the whole thing was they came down. And I don't know if it was that they were scared that they were actually like physically like pushing them back a little bit, but they cleared off after 20 seconds. And then Disa was like, they'll be back. And Duran's like, and when they do come back, we'll be ready. And I was like, that could be like in 20 seconds, like and also it made me feel almost like Home Alone, where he's like, I'll be ready for them when they come back. I think they'll be back tonight, and he's so we're gonna set up some paint cans in the face for the next like.
I would have loved a trap montage where they're just like painting stuff and like, this is great. Yeah. She's doing stuff like stringing it up, and we're like, this is going to be great. Disa and her
BB guns.
Yeah, exactly. It's like setting up action figures for them to step on. And they're like,
some micro machines.
Yeah.
Oh man,
little action figure. Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Well. Anyways, we get that's all we get of the dwarves. I actually like the pacing of this episode, how we got a little bit of every single storyline, even though it was a tiny bit of Arondir and a tiny bit of the stores. But it was a nice change. We didn't get much of Rune. We didn't get the Dark Wizard.
Pacing was very good. I made a note of that as well. I was
very economical.
Really
that was good. So
chugging along.
Writers, editors, whoever, showrunners, keep that up. But anyways, we're going back to Numenor. And we get a
pacing of this podcast, on the other hand, is all over the place.
It's all over the place. That's what happens when you have an American in the mix. Yeah,
gotta love it. Anyway,
we're too interested in what you have to say.
We got a beautiful horn from Numenor when they're summoning the worm. And actually, I saw an interesting TikTok the last day, and it was this guy, and he was basically rating all the horns that you hear in Peter Jackson's trilogy.
That's amazing.
And it was some incredible content. I actually loved it. It might have been like a 3-part TikTok, but I watched it all and loved it. This was a really good horn. I enjoyed the horn.
Oh yeah.
Here. And we finally get this Aarion and Elendil scene, the one that we've talked a little bit about. It's a great scene. She tells him to swallow your pride, and he's all about like, well, if pride is what you think I'm holding on to, or so. By the way, Lloyd Owens. He is 58 years old. I did not know that. He looks incredible.
Looks great.
I couldn't believe he's an incredible actor. He's definitely becoming one of my favorites in this TV show. But anyways, guys, I want to hear your thoughts on this scene, because we've talked about how Muriel enters and she demands that Elendil bows to Pharazôn. She says, Numenor needs men of faith. And I thought his response was beautiful. He says, faith is not faith. Faith is not faith if it is not lived. Very Tolkienian. Very like the message of Tolkien. I talked about it a little bit earlier, where it's kind of reflecting Tolkien's faith a little bit. And I liked how the writer included that in this episode.
I'm hoping you've written down the next part as well, where he talks about that I would not be the man that you look up to if I did swallow my pride. Sorry, if you
there was a little bit that I wrote down where he says, I would rather die with a heart that is whole than live with one broken by cowardice. And by the way, I thought
sounds great.
I thought that was also very Shutter Island-esque, where, is it better to live as a monster or to die a good man? I thought it was a similar enough one. But yeah, callbacks all around. And the final callback to the sea is always right in that scene. So, Chase, what do you make of this scene?
I thought it was great. And I thought it was powerful, that the idea that, we have to remember that this girl has lost her mother, her brother, and then now is about to lose, or actually lost 2 brothers. And a mother, and now is about to lose her father. So she really is like, I'm begging you to do anything, just stay alive, please. And for him, you also understand that this character, he's a military guy, right? He's part of the Sea Guard, or captain of the Sea Guard, and so he's not going to be he's not going to be the dad we all think of being like, oh, he's going to be warm. So like, I love my children. He does, but he's like duty first. Like that is the thing. I am a man. I'm the faithful, right? I'm one of the faithful. And this is the greater thing. And also he understands that while personally and selfishly, he may want to stay alive just to be with his daughter. He's like, that in the end is not what's going to help you. The best thing for you and my people, which is what makes him a great king, because he obviously we all know he will later go on to be a great king, is that's what it takes. It takes that sacrifice. And this was a great moment to show like this is why this guy is who he is and why they erect statues of him and things like that. And I was going to say one thing about his coming. Oh, I loved the way he delivered the line of like, if that's what you think this is, you think it's pride, then like, I've already lost you. And and obviously he kind of shames himself of being like, I didn't do a very good job of raising you if this is what you think this is, because it's so much bigger than that. And kind of wanting her to wake up and see what's going on. And we all, I think, as an audience, feel it from his perspective. We want her to wake up and be like, don't you see you're being manipulated the same way that, it's happening in a Region, it's happening to you. And they're just totally using your brother's death to just push you towards this horrible, horrible end.
And like I did mention how it's got that Tolkienian message, also a little bit of Star Wars as well, where joining the Sith is the easy thing to do, whereas being a Jedi is difficult. And he's saying faith is not faith if it's not lived, and if it were easy, then there's no
Everyone
point to
would
it.
do
So
right.
Yeah, exactly. Calling back to the Christian faith of Tolkien, I thought that was interesting. But what a character that we see here a lot better in a better light than previous episodes, in my opinion. But Johnny, I want to hear about yours. Would be Eärien, and her performance as well. I'm forgetting her name. Emma
Horvath.
Emma Horvath. Yeah. What did you think, John?
Yeah, I am a lot better in this episode. However, it did just feel a little bit like unwarranted. Again, in just the most recent episode, we saw her and Kemen walking the streets, disrobing her father basically of his title, and just kind of sort of saying, okay, we're stripping you of your title and he's kind of saying, what are you doing? This is not the way you were raised. And she's like, oh, careful, father, or else you might get into all sorts of trouble. And then literally the trouble that he could have got himself into, he gets himself into, and now she's like, oh my god, I'm going to lose my father. Whereas one episode ago she hadn't really thought of the repercussions of what was going to happen. So it feels like in one episode, again, we complained about this in a previous episode, where her character, her personality switch just seems to have been so dramatic and so drastic. And you would have thought that if Isildur had died, and that's the news that her father brings back from Middle-earth to Númenor, her first reaction should have been to get closer to her father, because now she's lost her mother, she's lost her other brother Anarion, she's lost her brother Isildur. It's only her and her dad. That's it left. And she's like, no, I'm going to get close to Kemen and to Pharazôn. It's like it just didn't land for me. Maybe, as you said, Chase, again, that maybe it's because of some of the scenes that have been cut from the Númenor plotline. That's what I was probably what's happening here. So we're just going to say I'm going to just say that's the reason for that. And maybe we should be thanking the showrunners for just cutting those scenes and giving us more Region and Celebrimbor Annatar action. So definitely a step in the right direction from Eärien. Actress did quite a good performance, but again, as I said, for me, I was just looking at it, I was like, this is like Braveheart, which is definitely not a bad thing. I enjoyed that kind of similarities of going to visit somebody who's like on a death row in their cell the night before, trying to say, look, just do this, and there's an easier way out, and they're like, no, I gotta stand to my morals and just bite the bullet.
A little bit Ned Stark like as well. But we get on to Elendil has to face the worm. And I personally liked this little bit of added culture or added lore to the Númenor storyline, because, everyone's praised the dwarves for the whole singing to the mountain culture. And I think this is quite a cool thing that, the faithful could have done. They could have had this kind of trial death sentence thing. But obviously we see Miriel takes his place. But yeah, this overall scene, I thought the design of the worm was pretty cool, or the big sea monster. But Chase, one thing I wanted to ask you about, what do you think of, because we just touched on the scene, but we didn't really discuss the possible relationship of Elendil and Muriel, because it looks a little bit more than just kinship.
Oh yeah, I mean, he definitely loves her. He's in love with her, and she loves him. She does totally do. Like, it's to me, it's so obvious every time she touches him, and they do a great job of that because it's not overt. It's not smacking us on the head as audiences. You just if they obviously trust the actors and they trust the writing, which is a great thing. I think it's why so many of the things I think the common theme throughout all the performances that we love is when less is more, because they're just trusting the actors,
it's
trusting
like bubbling
the writing.
under the surface.
Totally. And it's great. It doesn't need to be something where they just state everything. It's a show. You should just show the audience and trust that we're smart enough to pick up on it. So I think that's great. I love, like you were saying, the added lore of the worm. I love this sacrifice to Ulmo almost, you know what I mean? Like the sea god, and like, it is. And I almost wonder, I mean, we can talk about this. Do we think that sea creature is a form of his that he takes, and he is the one who like who runs that sea creature?
Who, Ulmo or Sauron?
I was gonna say Ulmo because it doesn't seem like that sea creature is a bad dude. He tried to kill Sauron. He was like, "You're on a boat, and I'm not letting you get too far," and just smash into that thing. Again, this is just a theory.
A lot of innocent people, though, but.
If we talk about Christianity, he was let's face it, God had a lot of collateral damage. Not to offend anyone listening, I apologize, but the guy was not exactly the most. He wasn't like laser focused on just getting one person. He was like, if we can get him and a couple other people go, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, what do you think, Johnny? Do you think that could be Ulmo's form? A type of form?
I've never heard this theory before. It's an interesting one. I like it. It's cool. So maybe I don't know. Ulmo, maybe it was the sea monster that kind of also rocked the boat when Círdan was about to drop the rings down into the chasm as well.
Whipped it with his tail and sent it back up.
Yeah. So what I was going to say about this is, again, anybody who listens to the show is going to know that my just hatred of trailers, and Dave knows where this is going. But this is the kind of thing for me. I just don't like that. Episode 6 into an 8-part series, we're still getting not just images but like little scenes of things that we've already seen play out in the trailers. And I'm like, when you've got an 8-part series, show us scenes in the trailers for episode 1, max episode 2, and then let us just live the rest of it without being like, okay, we can see the characters standing around the water, they're walking down, and in my mind, all I can think about is I know where this ends. It ends with Muriel in the water. Something's going to happen. There's going to be a switcheroo with Elendil and Muriel. And I can't turn my brain off when I'm just like, okay, so I can't just enjoy and live the scene. I'm just...
Because you're just waiting to see the thing you saw in there. Christopher Nolan does a great job in his trailers. Oh, you'll notice... He literally, doesn't show you a lot, but what you think you're seeing, you're like, oh my God, I bet that's the finale. And it's like, no, dude, that's the first 2 minutes of his movie. And buckle up. You have no idea what's about to happen. And I think that is a commentary on the entertainment industry as a whole. And I think that given the lack of advertising with season 1, it really just kind of came as a slow drip. And then all of a sudden it just came out of nowhere. And we were like, everything was silent. And then this season, it was just silence. And then we were getting clips. We were getting scenes. And it was a lot. And I think that is a statement more about modern audiences, less so than about these studios. Is it people? Some people just won't show up unless they're told exactly, here's what you get to see. You get to see this, and they're like, okay, well, I'll stick around for the sea monster in episode 6 because I haven't seen that yet. Whereas if they sell everything from the trailer in episode 1, maybe people would check out, and that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I listened to our episode that we did over 2 years ago now with you, Chase, and we talked about the exact same thing on that episode where we talked about, like, I think Johnny said, like, we're now episode 5 and we're seeing things from like the trailer, or maybe it was episode 6.
Hilarious.
I was like, we're still seeing things from the trailer, and you reacted with almost the same thing, but I think one of the things you said is you need to get people.
So 2 years ago, our podcast was a trailer for this one.
Oh my God, here we go.
I've seen this already.
2 years later, we're still waiting for Chase to talk about Christmas.
One of the things you were saying is, well, you need to get people in like bums and seats to see. Yeah. Let's just make the pilot really, really good. Do you know what I mean? And take all the trailers from that. But anyways, guys, we got to move on because we have to talk about the final scene. We'll blast through this. So we got the Queen of the Sea, and then the crowd flip flops again, and then Pharazôn has a nice gawk into the Palantir. But anyways, we get our final kind of two-parter scene with Galadriel first, before we get to Eregion. Galadriel thinks she's forming alliances with Adar, thinks it's kind of funny. She also names her ring, so there was no big reveal. If you've been listening to our breakdown episodes, myself and Johnny have been talking about how do we think she's going to call her ring Nenya? How do we think everyone's going to name their ring? And she just does it. I think, Johnny, you speculated that, and you're absolutely right. It wasn't a big reveal at all. But another reveal is she reveals Elrond's plan until Adar gets what he wants. And then Adar does a big reveal of all the legions of orcs. In my mind, I thought it was very similar to Dunharrow in the Return of the King book, where they are the movie as well, where you look out and you see all the Rohirrim army. And I was delighted because a lot of what we're complaining about, myself and Johnny anyways, is not enough people, not enough characters, like not enough extras and scenes like in Eregion, in Numenor, all that. Galadriel says this is what Sauron wants. And then there's almost a bit of hesitation from Glug before giving Adar the horn, which he blows. And again, I have to say, it's a great horn. Another great horn.
Very good horn.
Similar to the Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. It was just a bang. So, yeah, really cool. And then the camera pans over to Anatar. And guys, I want to hear your thoughts on this in a second, because he cuts himself, which was interesting, as he's staring out into the masses. Bell rings, war is coming. We all know about this scene. It is, in my opinion, brilliant. Celebrimbor's still there drawing rings. He pushes Anatar, which I thought was interesting. Talks more about the rings of power and how they will be deemed. Oh, sorry. We get the whole illusion, Sauron's illusion. And this is where he talks about the rings of power, and they'll be deemed more important than the Silmarils and more precious again in Middle-earth. And finally, we get the introduction of Feanor's hammer again. The music comes in magnificently when Sauron does the reveal. And then the whole episode ends with the slow-mo trailer shot of Anatar walking through and him staring at the battle. So, guys, that's a lot to unpack, but we're coming to the end of the podcast. So, what are our thoughts on this? Let's take the big thing, I suppose, which was the manipulation that Anatar does again on Celebrimbor, Johnny. The whole, changing the scene in his mind. What did you think?
Yeah, he put like a virtual background on Celebrimbor's eyes. I think. So this was so class. This was amazing TV. I had a big smile on my face the whole time I was watching the scene play out. So I loved it. And we've just given so much praise already in this podcast for Charlie Vickers' performance of Anatar. Charles Edwards' performance of Celebrimbor. When the two of them are together, just it's magic all the time. And I think the writing has been its strongest for these two characters as well. It's just been fantastic. I was, as soon as I saw that he was like, okay, I'm going outside, and I saw Anatar kind of force himself, like he had this moment where he kind of went, it's like he was trying to like let out a fart or something. I was like, is he doing what I think he's going to do? And then as soon as I saw what was happening, I was like fist bumping. I was like, yes, here we go, full on illusions from Anatar, just completely wrapping Celebrimbor's mind in his own web. And it was just fantastic. Also, if that's like what Celebrimbor thought was really happening in Eregion, he must have this idea of just the most, maybe that's what just happens on a daily basis in Eregion. It's the most idyllic scene. There's someone just rubbing a white horse. There's children just playing, and there's people painting in the courtyard and crocheting, and it's just the most idyllic things that you can think of, the most peace. This is a time of peace, guys. There's no war, nothing to worry about. So I thought it was so cool. And then I was like, how are they going to do it? How are they going to transition back in? And it was just flawless. I loved everything about it, but I'm going to let Chase speak now.
Yeah, it was within his mind. But Chase, you can react to that scene, but I also want to remind you of the Galadriel scene beforehand. So
yes.
What are your thoughts?
Johnny and I had a lot of the same thoughts. What I was going to say specifically about the moment, because it's bookended by the scene of him getting shoved against the wall, and then he's like, I'm going outside, and he goes out there the moment where Charlie takes the deep inhale and closes his eyes, because I didn't know what was coming next, I was like, ooh, I like this, like, sort of, it's like an acting choice, this thing of, like, he's like almost trying to be like, okay, keep it together. I know you're mad and you want to mess this guy up. He's like, remember the big goal here. He's got to finish these rings. So when the reveal came that what he's actually doing is this is him using his powers, because we don't really, again, soft magic. Yeah. We don't know how this stuff works, but seeing him do that and then the reveal of that, I was like, oh, guys, this is good TV. That is good TV. And I loved the only thing I will say, my one nitpick, tiny little thing, is that I didn't like that he confesses being like, the Valar didn't send me here. I came on my own. I didn't like that because it's like, okay, it's like, again, it's a less is more thing with me where I'm like, you didn't need to say that. This is enough that's going on here. You flatter him in all these different ways. Telling him that you have lied to him once again and that you're like, no, I came here on my own is just another reason to be like, wait, what? Like, that would have thrown me. But again, nitpick little moment there. But I think that whole transition was incredible. The transition back to reality, I think, is both an incredible cinematography move, great visual effects, and also just good storytelling of being like, this is how you tell a story. You don't tell us, you show us. And that is such a powerful moment of the juxtaposition, because you spend so much time in that idyllic Eregion, you almost forget. And so when it reveals again, you're like, oh, right. There's this horrible thing going on, and it's so much worse than we thought. And I wanted to say the previous scene with Galadriel and Adar almost reminded me of the Two Towers, where it was like, my lord, there is no such army, and he goes outside and he's like, and then there's 10,000 orcs there. It totally made me think of that, where I was like, he's having his Sauron moment, which also we all know that, hubris gets all those guys in the end. That with Adar, you're just like, oh man, like you are right. You're trying to do the right thing, but you too are falling prey to the exact same thing. It just shows how good Sauron is at manipulating everyone, because it really is. And also, again, testament to the showrunners, testament to the writers. What a great chessboard did they set up in the beginning of this season of him going to Adar, because you're like, why'd you let yourself get captured? Just so we could plant the seed of maybe he's an Eregion. Go there. So now I've got this guy moving here. I'm doing this, and they're all going to come here. And then the Galadriel mistakenly kind of revealing her plan, thinking, oh, Adar and I are friends. Let me tell you my whole plan. Reminded me of that scene in the Avengers where Black Widow gets Loki to sort of confess his plan that Hulk is the key to everything. And she's like being all sad. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm so weak. Oh, that's your plan? Cool. Turns on a dime and walks out of the room. And you're like, oh, that's great. Awesome. And this had that same moment where Adar is like, It's that whole thing of give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves. And she did. She just walked right into it. And you're just like, oh, God, dude. Everybody's manipulating everybody. And it just, once again.
It's fantastic to see that manipulation from Adar on Galadriel. And you're like, wow, Adar really is like a chess master. And then suddenly we cut to Anatar, who's just outmaneuvered Adar as well. You're going, all right, here we go.
Yeah,
so that's just it's so much fun.
Yeah, they're playing 4D chess.
In 2030. Well, 2030 of the fifth age.
Exactly.
So, guys, I feel like we could talk about this. And
totally good.
Chase, of course, it's amazing to have you on. But like before we wrap this up, I want to get your best and worst moments from this episode. So what would you say is your best moment from this episode?
I think my best moment has to be the sort of the veil of creating the perfect Eregion, and that shot of it swinging around and it becoming just fading away and going back to the chaos, I think is amazing. I think it's also a demonstration of Anatar's and Sauron's ability to manipulate, because he needs to be a threat. He needs to be the ultimate bad guy in order for us to really buy into this world. And I think they nailed that. My least favorite. This is tough. I mean, maybe just, it's not even really a bad thing. It's just, I don't care much for the storyline. So anytime we spend there, I'm sort of wishing we were somewhere else, which is just, like I said, a shame, because I really did enjoy the Harfoots scenes in season 1. This just feels to me like that, you know, the thing is, I'm not the target audience for those scenes. That's for people who are like, I need, like, my wife is actually a great example. She's like, this show is so depressing. So when the stores show up, she's like, oh, thank God, like I can have a moment just to like breathe and like have just some hope that, you know, these people go on to found the Shire and it's going to be good. And so I'm like, that's right. And I should remember that I'm viewing this through the lens of someone who knows more than the average viewer watching this. And two, that this show's got to appeal to a lot of people. And I think they're doing a great job of that. So that was my least favorite, if you will.
Awesome. Johnny.
Yeah.
Best and worst.
Class. Very, very good. It's going to be very similar, unfortunately. But I had written down for my first, it was going to be Anajar, Celebrimbor. That's pretty much the last few episodes. That's always been my favorite stuff. And I had written down the
just
exact
copy and
moment.
pasting, man.
I was like, it's actually the moment of the illusion transferring back into reality. That was going to be my favorite thing. Just to not rehash that and be like, okay, exactly the same. I do have an honorable mention, which would be the character of Adar in general in this episode. I thought he was fantastic. I loved seeing how Galadriel, who has basically been pushed forward as she is our main character, just being clearly outplayed, outmaneuvered, outthought, and just bettered by this character. And it just immediately kind of just projects him and pushes him up to this level where we're kind of going, oh wow, this is a guy, this is a force to be reckoned with, which I didn't really feel that much before. I felt like he was always just kind of, you know, the little brother of Sauron, kind of pushed to the side and be like, oh, I'm so angry, but I'm never really actually going to be able to do anything about it. This is like, oh, this guy, we need to take this guy seriously. I loved that as well. So that was really, really fantastic. And then, for my worst, again, I don't want to be brutal on it or anything, but it's just the same as you, Chase. I don't care much for the stores. And I'm really happy to hear that your wife likes them and that there is an audience out there that they are hitting. So that's great. I'm happy about that.
Cool. Well, because I want to finish this episode on a positive, I'll just start with my worst moment of the episode.
There
we go. We didn't really. I would have liked a bit more time to get into this, but something that has been annoying me is the common people of Numenor, and most of the time it's just how they're not filling up the space. But this time I'm actually going to say that each week it seems like they're just flip-flopping from Pharazôn to Miriel. Like, you know, an eagle arrives and they're like Pharazôn, and then suddenly now, like, she doesn't get eaten by, like, what is it with the creatures, and it just sways the eight townspeople. What's that about?
As an American in our current political climate, it is exactly like that. This is, art should be like a mirror held up, like Shakespeare said, a mirror held up to the world. It's pretty much like
Miriel.
That. Yeah, a Miriel up to the world. It is. We are fickle creatures. Look at every fandom in the world.
But
one thing comes out, we are so back. We are so back, and then it's what the hell? This is trash. It's this and that. Never get so mad. It's like, guys, there's a happy middle ground. I was just talking about this on Twitter the other day that I'm like, everything is either a masterpiece or it's trash. And I'm like, we can't exist. Art cannot exist through that lens. There is a happy middle ground for all these things. And I agree though. But I mean, cinematically, maybe you're right though. Maybe it does feel like a bit like Whiplash because we don't spend enough time with them. But it just shows you, it's like, man, people can be manipulated so easily.
You're right. It's probably the scenes that are being cut out, so I think it's just adding to the lack of understanding that the viewer has on how the common folk are feeling. But anyways, I'll finish on a positive, because best moments, it's hard because there's a lot and you guys went for some of the big ones as well. So I'm going to say that the dialogue between Elendil and Miriel I thought was brilliant, and I'm actually surprised with how much I am enjoying their kindling of a relationship, because a lot of people I actually don't know what the reaction is out there, but a lot of people are probably like, no, this is not lore accurate and blah blah blah. But really enjoyed that. There were so many good things about this episode, and I want to also give a special shout out to the writer of this episode, Justin Dobell. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. So I think I'm actually going to put this as my favorite episode of the entire Rings of Power. Absolutely loved it. But guys, this stream is going to end in like 2 minutes, so I'm going to finish it there. Chase, it was absolutely incredible to have you on.
Thank you guys for having me back. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're definitely going to do more of these. Unfortunately, the show only comes out every 2 years, but we'll have you on again.
Thank you.
But guys, Thank you so much for listening to this episode and watching. So please go check us out on YouTube, because we're putting up the full-length episodes up on YouTube. And please let us know what your best and worst moments of this episode was, and overall rating of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And that's all from us. Namarie.
See you later, guys.